How's it going, everyone? It's Pat, your friendly internet wordsmith, and this past week or so has been relatively insane, but let's make a video out of it. If you've been keeping up with the news lately, you're already aware that the United States government is going through a bit of a rough patch right now as we transition between presidents. So you might be at home watching this dumpster fire, and you might be thinking, this would make a brilliant dystopian story. I can make millions off this one-of-a-kind idea that surely has never been done before in the history of literature. If so, well, I'm here to give you my advice on how to write the most gripping and depressing dystopian story imaginable. Because, life just isn't depressing enough as it is. For our first tip, remember that dystopians aren't terrible for everyone. This may come as a shock, but not everyone is negatively affected by a dystopian world. One of the key points of dystopias are that in order for them to work, there is usually a higher class that is largely unaffected by the terrible things going on, and there's a lower class that are just getting royally boned by it. If we ignore the fact that the Purge franchise has basically become a gratuitous fuckfest of violence just for the sake of violence, then yeah, these movies are actually a prime example of what I'm talking about. They're filled with a lot of political and social subtext. In these movies, if you're rich and powerful, you ain't gotta worry about fucking Purge Night because you're rich and powerful. People really don't have a good opportunity to get at you. However, if you're like middle class and under, you better have your affairs in order come Purge Night because there's a high probability you're not gonna make it. And the worse off you are, the higher your chances are that you're gonna be sacrificed to purge the nation of its sins, as they claim this night is for. The important thing to note here is that systems such as this, the ones you find in dystopias, they need to be ushered in and sustained by the rich and powerful. If they're not beneficial to anyone, there's not any incentive to keep it in play. Like, in other words, if everyone is fucked over by the system and they're completely miserable by it, why is it allowed to exist? The answer is it wouldn't be. Tip number 2, just because it's a dystopia doesn't mean it has to be all dark and edgy. So there's a common theme amongst dystopias, and it's that everything has to be dark and dreary and everyone has the same gray matching jumpsuit and they all rock the same hairstyles and individuality went out the window and just everything is just fucking drab and looks the same, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Here's the thing though, just because you're writing a dystopian story doesn't mean you have to follow the same conventions that are typically associated with that. Society can be just as depressing and fucked up without everything being coated in a shade of gray and all the matching jumpsuits, whatever. In fact, I would argue that including some contrasting imagery against the bleak dystopian themes would be a breath of fresh air for the reader, and it would help you, stand out in a bogged out genre. On to tip number 3. Remember that dystopias aren't just about, corrupt governments. Another big common thread amongst dystopian stories is that they are often about, a big corrupt government abusing its power over the people. But frankly, that's the easy approach. By definition, a dystopia is an imagined state or society in which there is great suffering and disparity, often at the hands of a totalitarian government or post-apocalyptic event. The key word in this definition, though, is typically, as in it doesn't always have to be that way. You don't have to write a dystopian story in which, the government has gone out of control and it is abusing the people, or, a zombie outbreak has laid waste to the world as we know it. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a big, I don't write in dystopia, and I haven't read a lot of dystopian titles. I'm just saying that if you're trying to stand out in the genre and write a more original story that, readers will love, you might want to avoid the low-hanging fruit. Tip number 4, remember that dystopias aren't that far off from reality. So this one might be a little bit counterintuitive, but bear with me as I try to break it down for you. At first glance, dystopians might seem, super fantastical, not resembling real life whatsoever. I mean, because after all, in our Purge example, what nation would ever sanction, one day a year for all hell to break loose? Like, something like that would never happen. Well, I would certainly hope not. But what makes dystopias truly terrifying aren't just how crazy and outlandish they are and, how much they make us secure in the fact that, something like this could never actually happen. No, what makes dystopias really terrifying is just how similar they are to reality. Like, if one thing had went a different way, we could be in this dystopian scenario you're presenting to your readers. One thing I recommend doing here is try taking just some mundane, commonplace item. Something that is, so ingrained into life that you don't even really think about using it. But something that would definitely alter life if it wasn't present. And then imagine if that item was, limited. Only a select group of people can have access to it, or maybe the item doesn't exist at all, or maybe it did exist and now it's extinct. Yeah, imagine that, and how would society, react to that? And I don't know, there's your dystopia. And for my final tip, remember that the ending is never really the ending. As I said before, a lot of dystopian stories involve, corrupt governments, rebellions, overthrowing a fucked up situation or whatever. They involve a lot of that. And one of the big challenges when you're writing something like this is how to bring that story to an end in a way that is both believable and realistic. In case you didn't know, government regimes, no matter whether they were positive or negative, are never, just removed or overturned, and everything turns peachy. Removing any sort of government structure will always create a power vacuum in which everyone who thinks that they could have done a better job is going to try to seize that power, or anyone who just wants to seize that opportunity. A lot of times, these stories will give the, we're replacing the dictatorship with the democracy, so we can start running elections and queue up the barbecues and everything's fine now, and it doesn't work like that at all. Remember just a minute ago when we said that dystopian societies have to benefit somebody? Yeah, those people who were enjoying those benefits just a moment ago, they're gonna be pretty pissed that those benefits are now gone and they're reduced to, just being the same as everybody else, or potentially even lower. Yeah, they're gonna have something to say about that. What I'm getting at here is you can't just write a dystopian story, overthrow some corrupt, shitty system, and everyone's just okay with the hostile takeover, because regardless of whether or not it was for the greater good or not, it's still a hostile takeover, and that needs further explanation beyond just the witch is dead, we're good now, Otherwise, it's just a shitty end to a story, and nobody likes a shitty end to a story. And that's gonna do it for this video, guys. But before we close things out, I did want to say, just a few things here. As I said at the top of the video, this video was inspired partly by what's going on in, the United States government right now in regard to our 2020 election. And while we did have a few jokes here and there in this video, I did want to make it perfectly clear that, what's going on is incredibly serious, and frankly, it's scary as fuck. I could go on about how this is all incredibly disappointing to see this of my nation. I could tell you how terrifying it is to be a person of mixed race living in this social climate with everything that's going on right now. And I could go on and on about that. But I feel like there's enough of that circulating through the media, the news, and online and everything. I feel like there's enough of that circulating right now. So I want to focus on something else. Instead, I want to implore you to take care of yourselves and your family and, worry about your own mental health and stability. I want you to take time to de-stress and focus on what makes you happiest. It might seem like the world is literally on fire and burning right now, and in a lot of ways it is, but that doesn't mean we have to burn alongside it. Be safe, and I'll catch you in the next video.
Thanks for kicking it with us. If you had a good time, go ahead and slap that like button. And if you're new, consider subscribing, because we do this every week. Of course, you're going to want to hit that bell too so you never miss an upload. Have an awesome day, achieve something great, and we'll catch you later.